The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Lunch and Learn series on Friday the 13th. So welcome wherever you are, wherever you're tuning in. I'm assuming the sound's coming across well. If it's not, I'm sure you'll let me know. And so I've got a very special guest that I'm going to introduce you to shortly, but I guess a couple of formalities before we get underway. If you've got questions or comments that you'd like to make in relation to the presentation we've got today, you just go to the right hand side on the question box, open up the question box and type in your question, and do this the moment you think about it, because once it's in, I will see it, no one else gets to see it, and I will of course respond to it as soon as I see it. That way we don't leave the awkward 10 minutes towards the end when I'm asking you to send us questions, and then we find that really it takes a bit of a while to think about them. So just send them in the moment you've got them. The other thing that I want to make clear is that you will receive a recording and the slides at the end of the presentation as normal, and I'll try and get that off to you today, this afternoon, so you'll receive that in your inbox, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And that's about it. So we're well and truly into the Lunch and Learn. So let's just have a quick recap of where we're at. Now, we started off, and it was several months ago now. It seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't. And we really talked about the characteristics of high-performing teams. And basically, that was there were 8 characteristics I shared with you. And that comes from my latest book, which will be out next year, on team development or high-performing teams. So we went through those 8, and the whole point of that was to suggest to you that perhaps it might be a good idea to work on one of those 8 attributes or characteristics. And by doing that, because they're all interrelated, it's likely that you're going to have an impact on other characteristics in the model. So that was pretty much what we covered in Unit 1. Now in Unit 2, we looked at Bruce Tuckman's model of forming, storming, norming and performing. And the whole purpose of Unit 2 was to basically give you an opportunity to have a look at your own team and make an assessment about its level of maturity based on Tuckman's model. So I hope you had a chance to do that. And of course the reason for assessing that is so that you can move your team on to the next stage of development. And I guess the key point out of Unit 2 was, as a leader, there are certain things that you need to do in order to move that team on. And of course, last time we met, we looked at tools of leading teams, and pretty much what we were looking at there is this juggling act between task and relationships. And often, the point I was making there is it depends on what you're doing at the time as to whether or not you should be more task-focused, that is, the activities that you're running, or more relationship-focused, depending on the people in the team that you're leading. Now, we're going to continue that theme today because we're going to look at the roles that people play in teams. And that's where I've got my special guest speaker to come in and talk to us today, because it's true that people have roles in teams, of course, but those roles are usually functional, and we know what those roles are because they've usually got a job description attached to them. But there are other roles that people play in teams, and it's that part that we're interested in now, and people come to the team with their own paradigm or their own way of thinking. And so we're going to share with you a tool today that might be very valuable for you to be able to make better assessments of where people are at, what they're thinking, and so forth. It's quite interesting that we talk about diversity in teams, and we often talk about things such as age and gender and even ethnicity. But at the end of the day, there's also diversity about the way people think. All right, so I won't go on to Unit 5 and 6 today because that's in the future. In fact, we'll be covering those next year. So I just wanted to sort of do a little bit of an introduction here about the session today. and then I'll hand over to Jane, my guest speaker, and she'll take you through a presentation on the roles people play in teams. So I think one of the things I'd like you to think about as we go through this presentation today is to start thinking about how you might harness and utilise the different roles that people play in teams. And shortly we're going to share with you 8 of those roles. And of course, having not done the assessment, it may be difficult to be able to determine for sure where someone might fit around the wheel, as we call it. But of course, you can have an opportunity to do that. All you've got to do is contact me and we can make that happen for you if you want to do it for yourself or perhaps even for your team. Now, the other thing I'd mention to you about today's topic is that really what we're trying to do here is share the leadership so that, you know, you're playing on the strengths that people have in teams in terms of the roles that they play. And we'll get into that in a bit more depth later on. But I guess your role is very much like a conductor of an orchestra. You've got a whole lot of other people who are specialists in their own field. And of course, calling upon their way of thinking at the different points of a project can make a big difference in terms of making or breaking the success of the team. Now, the other concepts that I just wanted to mention to you is we've been talking about task and relationship, and I mentioned that earlier. Obviously, today is about building on the capacity of the team, and that is the relationship aspect of the team. Now, by doing that, it's likely, of course, that you'll actually be able to improve the relationship dimension as well. So this is very much a focus on relationship, as it was last time we spoke. And of course, it's all about interacting with people and drawing upon their capacities and the way they like to think. And I'm just going to just close that out. Okay, so what I'd like to do now at this point is introduce you to my very special guest speaker, who I might say has done this on short notice, so I really appreciate that, Jane. Just a little bit of background. Jane O'Brien is the General Manager of Client Success and also a Leadership and Development Specialist with Team Management Systems. Some of you may have done team management profiles in the past, and if you have, it'd be good to hear a little bit about that to give Jane a bit of an assessment about where you're at. But Jane has a very strong belief that the key to organisational success lies in the quality of the people and how effective they work together. And that's very similar to my own particular view. So it is very much about getting the best out of people, as I said. She's been a L&D specialist for a number of prominent organisations such as Coca-Cola. Other ones are Officeworks, the St John's Ambulance, to mention a couple. So she's had a vast experience, not just with this profile that we're going to talk about, but also organisationally as well. She's got qualifications in learning and development, business administration, and HR. So welcome, Jane.
Thank you, Tim. Welcome to everyone that's online, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I don't think I've ever been introduced in such a lovely way, so thank you for those accolades and sharing what my background is. It's my pleasure to join you all today and talk about teamwork and the importance of teamwork and the diversity of teams. And I'm going to be sharing with you the team management profile, which is one of the tools that we actually have as part of our profiling suite here at Team Management Systems. So like Tim said, I work for Team Management Systems. I do, as part of my role in learning and development, the accreditation for this tool with facilitators who then go on to use the tool in organisations or if they're a consultant with their clients. So the team management profile is what I'm going to be talking about today. I just wanted to check before I get started, has anyone got their sound on, just in case I ask some questions? Are you able to confirm whether or not the sound's on, Tim, or if anyone can hear us?
I think we're all fine, Jane, from this end. So
So I'll keep going.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm going to start off with is talking about at TMS, we are all about people. We are a company that's been around for just over 30 years, and we specialise in psychometric tools. Our organisation was started by Doctors Charles Majerison and Dick McCann over 30 years ago, when they were lecturing at the University of Queensland, and one day sat down and said, why are some teams better than others? What makes them successful, and how do they sustain their successful business models and success in what they're trying to achieve? And from that question and many years of research, they came up with several psychometric tools, and one of them is the team management profile, and that's what I'm going to introduce you to today. I just wanted to share that I'm not alone in this team. I have two senior L&D consultants that I work with as well, Cleo Robertson and Sarah Ekbal. Together, combined, the three of us have 35 years experience using this tool, and we're very proud to say that we have over 4,000 network members that work with us to share this amazing profile across the globe with our partners. So I just wanted to build a bit of credibility about what I'm going to talk about, so that you know that there is reliability and credibility in our tool. The tool is actually been reviewed by the British Psychological Society, and we continue to review the tool every few years, and we've just released our Research Manual 5 in October last year, which is a review of the tool and looking at, you know, how is it still current? Is it still relevant today? And how do we bring it forward to leadership and team development in the world of work that we work in now? So the tool is very current, and it is researched and reliable and valid in the workplace. So let me get started. Sorry, my screen's just gone a little bit funny there, so I can't see what's going on. Sorry to hold you up there, everybody. I'm just going to move a couple of things. So basically, the team management profile, it's a powerful self-analysis tool. It's a mirror that allows groups and individuals to self-assess without threat. So what does that mean? That sounds like a nice statement. It is actually a self-rated profile. Participants actually do a 60 questionnaire question which takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and that actual questionnaire develops a profile for you. And that profile is between 30 and 40 pages long. And it's an individual profile that talks about your work preferences. So people at work. Some of you may have used different tools or even used our tool, but what makes it different from other psychometric tools out there is we are looking at people in the workplace. If up on your screen now, you'll actually see that there's three models, and we call this our team management wheel, and it comprises of the work. So what are the tasks that people do on a day-to-day basis? What do these high-performing teams do consistently that gets them results? I'm going to pull that apart in a moment so you'll understand what that part of the wheel is, and we call this our types of work wheel, and that's that model on the left. The middle model, which is the people piece or the dynamics of teams, is what we call our Rido scale, where we look at relationships, information, decision-making, and how people like to organise themselves and others at work. And we call this the people side, or the dynamics of teams. And when we combine work, so the types of work people do, plus the Rido scale, or the dynamics of people, and we bring these two models together, we get people at work. And you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen there, the team management wheel. These are the 8 different roles that we talk about, those roles that Tim was talking about that people play in teams. And you will naturally have a preference for the type of work that you do, and the preference or that work that you prefer to do that gives you joy at work. So we talk about people practice what they prefer and become proficient in that practice, which gives them, you know, that pleasure at work. So, you know, those days where you go to work and, you know, the day goes really quickly, if you reflected on that day, it's probably because you're in that sweet spot of work. You were doing all the nice things or the things that you prefer to do. And different teams will have, you know, people doing different roles in them, and some people will like doing some of those roles more than others. Doesn't mean to say we can't do all of the roles in the team. It's just that we will have a preference for somewhere in the team management wheel. So let's have a little bit of a pull apart more so as what this actually looks like. So there's Dr. Charles Majerison and Dick McCann. Both of them are, academics. Charles Majerison on the left there is an educational psychologist, and Dick McCann is a chemical engineer. So it was a lovely combination for them to come together and look at what do teams actually do. So that model that you can see on the screen now is the types of work wheel. You'll actually see it's broken down into the 8 different types of work. So if we think about advising, so the very dark green piece on the wheel, Charles Majerison and Dick McCann looked at these teams for many years to understand what is it they did that made them high functioning teams. And what they found that high performing teams do the advising type of work. There will be people in those teams that potentially will love to do the advising, going out and reporting and gathering of information. Even if there wasn't that type of work to really inside their organisation but outside of their organisation. They found that high performing teams also innovated. There was innovating happening, even the small things, the big things. If we think about organisations that don't innovate, if we think about Nokia as an example, where's the Nokia phone today? How come, where's Apple come from? Apple, Samsung has taken over the mobile phone network. If we think about Blockbuster Video, how did they not keep up with the trends and move forward in the world of work to ensure that their businesses were sustainable? They also found that these high-performing teams promoted. They had promotion happening with their internal, external stakeholders. They were promoting their ideas and their information that they were gathering inside and outside of the organisation. They also found that these high-performing teams did the developing type of work, were assessing and testing the applicability. God, that's a word that I can't get out on a Friday. The application, I'll change that, of new approaches. So there were people that were testing these things. They weren't just coming up with ideas and organising them and thrusting into action. They were actually testing to see if they could be applicable to that organisation and it was the right fit. They also found that these high-performing teams were well at being organised. They were organising people, resources. They could organise, those rosters. What were the resources they need to get the job done? They were very resourceful, these high-performing teams. They also had to be producing. So we're in the purple part of the wheel now. These high-performing teams needed to produce the goods. So they were concluding and delivering on those outputs. And they were consistently doing all of these things. They also found that these high-performing teams did the inspecting type of work, controlling and auditing the working systems that were in their organisation. And they also found that these teams did the maintaining type of work of upholding and safeguarding standards and processes. So there's 8 types of work there, or tasks, that these high-performing teams did. But you'll actually see in the middle of this type of work wheel that there's a linking piece. And what they found was that there were these 8 different types of work, but the team actually had to come together and link together to be high-performing. We couldn't just have, a team just can't be organising and producing without advising and gathering and reporting on information. Or, if we took out parts of the wheel of this type of work, these high-performing teams might have still been, chugging along, but they weren't consistently high-performing. If they're not inspecting the quality of their work, how can they continue to develop things and produce really good outputs? If they're not testing these new ideas and ensuring they can work, do they thrust into action and things weren't developing and coming to fruition the way that they wanted it to? So basically, it started off with Dick and Charles looking at what do high-performing teams do, and these are the tasks that high-performing teams do consistently that sit within our model. And in a profile, if you were to do one, or if you already have one, you would actually, in your report, it would identify a percentage around the wheel as to what where your preference is. So as an example, in my types of work, distribution percentages, in the innovating space, I have about 33%. So it shows that I like to spend a lot of my time in the innovating space. Whereas it could be that my colleague, if we break down their wheel, they'll actually have, you know, maybe 15, 20% in the organising space and 30 or 40% in the inspecting. So I just wanted to touch on how do we understand what you like to do. It's through the report. But more importantly, from what I can understand from these lunch and learns, it's for you as leaders, how do you actually understand the types of work that your teams need to do to be high performing? So if you actually would just like to take a moment to think about your own teams or the team that you work in, what's the type of work that's missing for you and why is it missing? Just have a moment to think about that. If you wanted to provide me with any feedback on that question, you can type even into the chat box and I'll open that up. So what is the type of work you think that might be potentially missing from your teams and what are the implications for that? A bit like a Nokia, if you're not innovating, what does that mean? From a development perspective of leaders, it's our job to lead teams into these spaces. If you've got a team that doesn't like to do the innovative type of work, it's not their preference, then how do you lead them into that space? If you have a team that's very focused on just producing, what does that mean to your team? Are they missing out on maintaining standards or inspecting the quality of their work? And what does that mean for the team? So this very first part of the model is really important, not just from a team perspective. It's important for individuals to understand their preferred way of working. And it's also important for the leader to understand, is my team holistically approaching the type of work they need to do to be high performing? So let's have a look at this through the eyes of a barista. And you might think, okay, well, how do we apply this? The types of work let's talk about what does a barista need to do to be amazing from a type of work perspective. So if we think about the barista who makes our coffee every day, if you're a coffee drinker like myself, we hope that they're doing the producing because that's why we've gone to them, is to get that beautiful cup of coffee that's going to get our day started. But to be a high-performing barista in a high-performing team, the barista actually needs to do the advising type of work. They need to go and gather and report on information. They need to talk to their customers and ask questions. How is your coffee? You know, what are the beans that you like? Where else do you buy your coffees from? What is it that you like about that? They may be out there reporting and advising on beans that are being toasted or roasted in a particular way. But high-performing baristas will actually be reporting and gathering information. It might not be, well, it isn't in fact, it's not the primary part of their job, but to be successful, they need to be gathering and reporting on information. Baristas also need to be able to try something new to attract more customers. Maybe they're creating and experimenting with ideas, coming up with a new chai latte with a sprig of mint in it for those who want something different. High-performing baristas also need to be able to educate others and explain their uniqueness. How do they promote what they're doing in their cafe? How do they get people excited and to come back and encourage that repeat business? How do they promote their ideas maybe to their boss? Maybe they've got an idea that they want to get over the line. How do they get their boss excited about that and get that buy-in? Baristas also need to do the developing type of work and assess and test those new approaches. Maybe experiment with the machine settings to improve the flavour of their coffee. They also need to do the organising. Maybe they need to have their rosters organised. They certainly need to be able to organise and track their coffee orders to ensure they're coming out on time and they haven't got those grumpy caffeine frustrated people standing in front of them and who can't get their coffee. High-performing baristas, primarily, this is a major part of their role. They do need to make the coffee. But if we think about it holistically, they're not going to have customers unless they understand what their customers need. They're innovative, they promote it to their customers, they make sure they're delivering the right thing, and they're organised. If you think about your own experience with buying coffee, if you next time you go and stand and you're waiting for your coffee, maybe you can go through your own mind, What are they doing to advise? How are they gathering and reporting on information? What's the latest thing that was innovated in the cafe that you went to? How do they promote their products and services to you? Can you see them testing the coffee machine before they start, crushing the beans? How do they organise themselves? Are they disorganised? Are they really organised? Is it a smooth ship that's sailing along? And are you happy with the coffee that they're producing? Well, the next part is that they actually need to be testing and inspecting their own work. Do they drink their own coffee? Hopefully they've got one there and they're sipping away to test the quality of the coffee that you're getting. But are they actually doing the maintaining too? Are they keeping customers happy and keeping the beans fresh for you as their client? So they're the types of work that a barista would do. Don't forget, there's not just 8 types of work they need to do. They also need to be linking. And this part of the centre part of the types of work wheel is about linking people, task and leadership. So for you who are attending this workshop, we actually talk about the importance of, in leadership, how you link the people, how do you bring them together through their communication and allocating tasks, and what is your own leadership? How do you motivate and lead your team? And that's another aspect of this particular profile, is to look at from a linking perspective. It's important that you must have that cultural piece of people involved and the task, and that you link your leadership back to both of those. And we do know that culture drives strategy, so you do need to actually link your people together and get them working together to ensure that your team can be high performing. That's the very first part of the wheel, is looking at or the team management profile, the types of work that people do. The next part, or that Rido scale that I mentioned earlier, was looking at people's work preferences. So we can actually look at people's work preferences through handwriting. Do you prefer to write in your left or your right hand? What are you naturally, what is your preference, and how hard is it to change to your opposite preferred hand? Doesn't mean to say you can't do it, it just makes it feel uncomfortable. I'd just like you to take a moment to fold your arms. Fold your arms and feel comfortable. Now I'd like you to swap to change your arms to fold the other way. You can still do it, but it feels a little bit uncomfortable. Now change them back to the preferred way of folding your arms. This is no different to when we talk about work. People will have work preferences in the way they go about doing their work. And we talk about the work preference measures through the Rido scale, through relationships, how you relate to others. Do you have a preference for extroversion, or do you have a preference for introversion in the way you like to relate to others? Do you have a preference around the way you like to gather and use information? Are you more practical with information or more creative? From a decision-making perspective, how you like to make decisions, are you more analytical or beliefs-based? And from an organisational perspective, how you like to organise yourself and others, are you more structured or flexible? And what's really important to understand in these work preferences is that while you have a preference, everyone in your teams, or the people that you work with, will actually have preferences too. So let's pull apart the very first piece around relationships. When we talk about relationships and how people like to interact with others, we generally talk about, do I have a preference for being extroverted, or do I have a preference for being introverted? People with a preference for extroversion crystallise their thoughts through talking. They get their energy from others, and we talk about it at TMS is that people with a preference for extroverted generally like to speak in drafts, so they do lots of talking and they get their thoughts out of their head and share it with others. Those that have a preference for being introverted like to crystallise their thoughts by thinking, and they get their energy from being alone potentially, and we talk about that they'll introvert all their thoughts and potentially speak in final copy. So as a leader, I suppose for you, it's about thinking about what your preference is. You might not be on either end of the scale, you might be somewhere in the middle. But when you're leading teams and leading the teams to high performing, you need to understand their preferences. Do you actually do a lot of talking and don't give your teams time to stop and think? Or do you have a preference for introversion and you do a lot of internal thought and your team aren't knowing what's going on because you're internalizing your thought process? So it's really important that you understand the relationships piece between teams, between each other, and for you as a leader leading those teams. If we look at information, the next part of our Rido scale, it's about how do you like to get to use information. Are you more practical? Are you more present orientated? Are you patient with routine work and you're good with details? Or are you on the other end of the scale where you're more creative, future orientated, can get bored with routine work and you tend to see the bigger picture? Or are you somewhere in the middle? If we think about teams and we've got maybe a team that's very practical in their approach, do they forget to do the innovative type of work? Or we may have a team that's very much on the scale of doing the creative type of work, and they forget the details and the practical side of their work. So for you as leaders, again, it's about finding the balance of bringing that practicality and creativity into your high-performing teams. If we like to look at the third part of the Rido scale, we're talking about decision-making. Do you have a preference for being analytical? Are you task-orientated, measured decisions off against payoffs? Do you like clarity and analysis? Or do you have a preference for being belief-based in your decision-making? You're principle-orientated, you measure decisions off against beliefs, and you like harmony based on common values. And this is a very tricky one to manage from a leadership perspective with teams, because generally conflict, decision making, a lot of conflict comes from decision making and people having different views. And when we unpack this with teams and for you as individuals and leaders, to understand, is a person coming from an analytical lens or a belief-based lens, it can really help with understanding how to move forward with decisions and finding what we call that common ground or that zone of possible agreement. But once again, it's up to leaders to actually bring the teams together to have a very balanced view around analytical and beliefs-based decision making, and ensuring that everyone has a voice and diversity is understood within the team from a decision making perspective. The last part of our Rido scale is looking about how we like to organise ourselves and others. Are you more structured or flexible? Or is your team, the teams that you work with, the individuals, more structured or flexible? We know people with a preference for being structured are action orientated. They'll develop and stick to a plan, and they can propel towards deadlines in a consistent fashion. People with a preference for being flexible, information orientated, they often plan for often change from day to day and can propel towards deadlines in bursts. There's no right or wrong here again. It's all about preference. But once again, as leaders, we need to be mindful that at times our teams need structure and at times they need flexibility, and sometimes we enforce our preference of organisation onto our teams when we need to be able to be flexible to adapt to their approach and also offer them structure and certain things that they need to be high performing as well. So if we bring together our types of work wheel, so the 8 types of work and linking with the model of people, so the Rido scale that I've just described, and we map that Rido scale onto the types of work wheel, we bring together what we call our 8 team roles. So you can see on the right-hand side of your screen there, when we combine those models together of work plus people gives us people at work. We actually understand that there's 8 types of role, 8 different roles that people play within teams. And you will find that when you do these profiles that some teams are balanced and some teams are what we call unbalanced. The balanced teams may have someone in every part of the wheel or closely to every part of the wheel, and some teams are unbalanced where there may be a focus of people, maybe, as a group, as an example, a group of 10 people, there might be 5 assessor developers and 2 creator innovators in the team and a couple of explorer promoters, and then there's no one down in the bottom half of the wheel to do that type of work. What does that actually mean? It actually means that you have an opportunity to ensure that that type of work is getting done. It doesn't mean to say that people can't do that type of work. It just means that when they're under pressure, they revert to their preference. So you'll actually see that there's different ways that you can use our tool. We can use the tool to coach leaders and individuals. We can actually use it for intervention with teams to get them moved from maybe good to great. It's a great tool for looking at diversity in teams and ensuring that everyone's preferences and the way they like to go about doing their work is included. For you as an individual, understanding your own work preference is really important because it actually gives you the ability to develop other skills in other parts of the wheel, or use the strengths that you have to develop and grow as a leader in your organisation and with your teams. So what actually happens is these 8 types of roles come together in your profile to understand what is my work preference, what is my leadership through my work preference. The tool actually identifies how do you like to lead from your work preference as well. What's your communication style? It pulls apart the Rido scale and your net scores to help you understand, you know, your relationship piece, how you use information, your decision making, and how you like to organise yourself. We also have on the left-hand side of this particular screen, you'll see a bit more of a technical model. Within those 8 team roles, there's other roles as well, which I won't go into today, but quite often people say, well, it sounds a little bit too simple to be true. There is what we call a 16-fold model that sits behind those 8 team roles that describes even more so what people like to do in teams. And I'm sure that Tim would be able to share that with you if you were interested in understanding your own profile. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the different 8 team roles and what those different roles look like. And I'm just going to turn a page over in my workbook to make it a little bit easier for me so I don't have to remember everything. But if we look at the reporter advisor within a team, their major characteristics is, you know, that they love to be the supporter and helper in the team. They don't like to be rushed, and they love to go and get that information and bring it back to the team. Just if you think about in the teams that you're working in, or even in your own type of work, this may be something that you like to do. Their general behaviour is that they love to go out and find things. They're that first person that says, oh, hang on, I'll go and look for that for you, or let me go and get that information and bring it back to the team. They can tend to put off decision making. Because they get a little bit of analysis paralysis. They've got to go and get all the information before they can move forward. Very vital part of the team, like every role within the team management profile. The green part of the wheel we call the creator innovator. No real big secrets there. These people love imagination. They're very future orientated. They can see the bigger picture. They love to find out new ways, and quite often they like to work independently. And can often have irregular work patterns. But once again, a really important role within the team management wheel. The explorer promoter, this is the person, if you've got to try and get some budget or something over the line, love to go and talk to hierarchy or the seller of concepts that or new ideas in an organisation. They're the persuader, you know, it's that person that you could say, oh, they could sell ice to Eskimos. This is the person that loves to do that type of work. They're an influential person and generally a good communicator and quite outgoing. The assessor developer role within the team management wheel, they're very analytical, they like to develop ideas, a bit of an experimenter, so we'll have a go with things and often like to break them and see if they can make them fail. They like to move from task to task. They don't like routine generally, but they do like plans. So once again, a very important role as with all the roles in the team management wheel. Thruster organiser, organises and implements, quick to decide, analytical, like to set up systems, very results orientated, love to make things happen like their name suggests, are very impatient at times and just like to get things done and may overlook people's feelings because they just want to get stuff done. So a very important part of every team as well. The role of concluded producer is very practical, down to earth, love to get things done and produce and see the results, can't put things down until they're finished. They can be time conscious, they prefer routine, and they like to make schedules work. So this could be you as well. Controller inspector, the role in the team, strong on control, low need for people contact, love to be the enforcer of regulations, so can be quite interesting. This role, people have a preference for being introverted, and quite practical, so an important part of any team as well. The upholder maintainer role is quite a conservative role. Personal values are important and they have a strong sense of what's right and wrong. They can help weld the team together because they're all about maintaining relationships as well, and usually have a quiet approach to their work and are dedicated to their beliefs. So their intrinsic moral compass does a lot of spinning, and they really like to bring home that beliefs-based decision-making piece. So I just wanted to touch on the different roles within the high-performing teams. Like I said, you may have a balanced or an unbalanced team. Doesn't mean to say that you don't operate in all parts of the wheel. It just means to say that everyone has a preference. Those preferences are very embraced. There's no right or wrong, and the diversity of teams what brings that high performance to life. So this is the team management wheel here. Those are 8 different roles and the role of the linker. The role of the linker is non-negotiable for everyone. So everyone will have their preferred roles and a couple of related roles that they like to do. But the centre part of that team management wheel is that linking or that linker piece. And everyone, for a high-performing team to come together to be high-performing, everyone needs to link or pace each other's preferences. So how do I pace your preference if it's different to mine? If I have a preference for being extroverted and you have a preference for being introverted, how do we come together and find that common ground? If I'm the person that loves to do all the talking in the meeting and you like to listen, you know, how do we come together and say, what do we need from each other for our relationship to work? I might need to do less talking and you might need to do more talking, or we may need to, you know, come up with some other strategies on how we can work best together. But that's the whole thing about the team management wheel. It's not about anything being wrong. It's about embracing the diversity of the team and the work preferences that people bring into high-performing teams. So just to recap and bring it all together, work, or the types of work, what are the tasks that people will do, or the tasks that high-performing teams do, plus people, so the Rido scale of relationships, information, decision-making, how we like to organise ourselves gives us people at work, the 8 different roles that high-performing teams do consistently to be high-performing. And I will bring up this little final bit of the screen here. I'll just open it up for any questions, but I just wanted to say that was a very short overview of understanding the team management profile and what sits within the profile. From my experience, people that have a profile and use the profile individually and with teams and in their organisations quite often say to us, I wish we'd known about this stuff earlier, because it makes understanding teams to go from good to great so much easier. And I know Tim talked about in your second session, Lunch and Learn, you talked about the Tuckman's model. What we actually see is when we overlap this piece of work into the Tuckman's model of moving teams around from that forming and storming into norming and high performing, this tool actually gives teams a very good understanding on how to get from that forming and storming part into high performing. So I'd like to thank you for having me on today. Thank you, Tim, for the opportunity. I hope you've got something out of this session, and thank you very much for the opportunity, and I wish you all the best, and I hope you can continue to grow in your development and in the roles that you work with. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jane. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. That was, I love the barista analogy. It made a lot of sense to me, so well done. I thought that was really great. And I think the key message for everybody there is, you know, look at your teams in a different perspective. Look, we've just got a little bit of time here for any questions. So anyone got any comment, questions, observations, just go to the question box and type in your question. And while Jane's here, she might be able to answer that. But if not, we'll keep going. I'm just going to wait and see if anything comes up. I don't know whether you've actually had a go at the team management profile, but certainly there's an opportunity there to do that if you want to enrich your team in a different way. Maybe you've already done that and you've got the benefits from it, so it'll be interesting to see how people feel about that. All right, no questions at this stage? All right. So Jane, I might just I'll just move back to my original. Whoop, that's
Great.
right. I've got to make myself
Nice.
presenter, don't I? Okay, make presenter.
There we go.
There we go. Show my screen, and I've just got one or two slides just to finish up with. Where are we? I can get rid of that, and then I can. Yep. I'll just. Oh, okay. All right, so I hope you found that really useful. Thank you, Jane. That's wonderful. And to do that on short notice too, and to do it so professionally and in a structured way. Just for your information, for those of you who are tuning in today, I'm an organiser. Jane's at the top of the wheel in the promotion side, promoter explorer. So we come at things from a different angle, but that's the whole point, isn't it? Your team members all have different ways of thinking, and the key point is, of course, to try and harness that as much as you can and not get frustrated about it, which is very easy to do, of course. So we really wanted to sort of balance up the task and the relationship discussion today and really talk about this whole notion of relationships from a different angle today. So just as a quick, I went too far there, let me just back up. All right, I've given you a little bit of homework here to do, and I'd just like you to have a think about doing this. You've got this afternoon, of course, before you finish up for the weekend, but I'd like you to observe your team. I'd like you to watch and think about how they might communicate. And maybe you can even match some of the roles that Jane was running through with your team and actually think about it from a different perspective. So what are their preferences? And perhaps you might want to consider those preferences as well. So that's your homework before we meet again in the new year. So in the new year, we've got 2 units that we're covering: managing team conflict and negotiation. I'll be sending you out a diagnostic for that this afternoon. So I'd ask you to complete that in preparation for our next session next year. And of course, the final session will be on creating a team culture, which Jane touched on today. So I want to thank everyone very much for tuning in. I want to wish you a really safe and hopefully relaxing holiday if you're having a holiday. And if you're not, I'm sorry to hear that. And I hope that, next year promises everything that you set out to want to achieve. And so on behalf of Jane and myself, I just want to thank everyone and wish you all the best. And I'll sign off here. So thanks, everyone. I wish you all the best and have a great weekend as well. Thank you and goodbye.